How's it going, folks? Welcome back to Pick Band Breakdowns. We're here with week 1 of the LCK with Samsung Galaxy versus the Jin Air Green Wings. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the match here. Now, not too much was known about this Samsung roster just because they're all either new players, rookies, or substitutions from the previous roster because all their players went to Korea, or went to China. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in, see what their strategy maybe is. Not too much, once again, to sort of look forward to with this team, but they may be a surprise, you never know. So they're going to go ahead and start out with that Azir ban, as Jin Air goes ahead, takes away the Janna. 2 power picks, or 2 power bans, I apologize once again, not too much really to talk about there. But the Xerath, we're going to go ahead and see the Xerath ban from Samsung. Now, as far as I know, Xerath isn't sort of known commodity for Bliss or Gank by Mom. Gank by Mom, I would maybe say I would have more of an idea that he plays it just because he does like a little bit of utility mid laner, or that's something that he's a little bit more comfortable with. But I'm not entirely sure there. But I know Bliss isn't really too much of a Xerath player, so that may be why they banned that out there. Now the Xerath is such a popular pick from the Korean scene, and I have a couple of theories why. I think the Xerath is really the epitome or the pinnacle of what Koreans want in a champion, or what their sort of strategies are based around. It's a lot of poke, it's a lot of map rotations, positioning, being very smart and intelligent with where their fights are, where they can force fights, securing the objectives by using the long-range poke and the long-range damage source from the Xerath. Not being in the incorrect position, things like that, and it's that sort of intelligent play that they feel that if you play a correct Xerath, there's really no way to outplay it. It's kind of like when you play a Caitlyn. It's very safe, it's very long range. If you position perfectly with a Caitlyn, there's no way you can die as the Caitlyn unless they completely jump and waste so much on you that it doesn't even matter. So yeah, I think that's sort of the reason why Xerath's such a popular pick. But again, if Bliss doesn't play it, it's something that they want to go ahead and take off that table because it is such a long-range champion that you really just don't want to deal with it. Now, Jin Air is going to go ahead and ban out the Lee Sin. It's something that we know that Eve plays. And again, it's just a very strong power pick. And then you're going to see Samsung take away the Lissandra. Once again, just a very strong pick there. Lissandra is something that GBM and Trace do go ahead and play. So again, it's just a very strong flex pick. And then you have the Gnar being taken out. Kuve does play that Gnar, and Gnar is just a very strong power pick at this point in time as well. The strong thing to point out about Jin Air and about Trace. Trace is one of the few top laners that plays the top lane Morgana, and very known for playing that top lane Morgana. So that Morgana pick is extremely strong, and it can be sort of known to ban out Jin Air because if they do pick that that Morgana, you don't know where it's going because Gank My Mom plays it mid as well. So you don't know if it's going to be top, mid, or support, so it's a triple flex pick. Just very confusing to go ahead and maybe pick ban against it. Something they just want to kind of take off the table to get rid of. So you do see Samsung taking that Jarvan. So again, something that's a very strong power pick. They're just going with power picks here. But you do have the Corki Morgana coming in from Jin Air. Again, something that I just talked about the Morgana. It's a triple flex pick. We know that that's a very strong pick for Trace and GBM, but something that Che plays as well. Pilot going ahead and securing that Corki, a champion that he's, of course, very comfortable on. Something that he's known to play. So we do have, to maybe counteract that, we do have Samsung taking the Thresh and the Lucian. Strong picks there, just power picks as well. The Thresh, of course, giving that utility, a lot of engage potential, along with Fury with that Lucian. Going to be able to trade very, very easily with that Corki. One of the few champions that can trade with a Corki in the mid game. So something that's going to make that laning very possible, very easy. But Jin Air can go ahead and put that Morgana down, maybe negate a little bit of the Thresh utility with that Black Shield. So something to be very aware of there. GBM going ahead, gonna lock in the Lulu, as well as they're gonna go ahead and grab the Rengar as well. So the Lulu pick, again, something very utility based. We right now do have a sort of protect the Corki kind of comp. Lulu does put out quite a bit of damage, but again, more there for the utility mid laner. Going to be able to shield up that Corki quite a bit, along with the Morgana, keep him safe, keep him protected, so he can put out that damage as much as possible. The Rengar's there, mainly just to add a little bit more damage, because again, it's just that low damage comp. Again, the Lulu and the Morgana put out the damage, but not as much as that true sort of mage mid laner, top laner that you're going to look for that second source of damage. So we have the Corki and the Rengar for a little bit more damage. Corki does bring a little bit of magic damage as well. Maybe bounces that out with the Lulu. So yeah, just a solid pick there. I can see where they're going with the comp here. We do have Samsung rounding out this comp with the Jace and the Rumble. So now, looking at the Jace and the Rumble, along with the Jarvan, I do like their team comp, or their team fight possibilities here. Now, the team fight coming in from Samsung, very, very strong. You have the Cataclysm coming in from Jarvan, able to lock down as many targets as he possibly can, putting that, and then putting on the Rumble ulti on top of that, layering all those ultimates, as well as the Lucian ultimate coming through as well. Just a lot of damage coming into that one strong area, along with the poke and sort of the damage source coming in from Jace, and then the AoE coming in, and utility just overall coming in from Thresh. So a very high engage composition coming in from Samsung. The only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is, again, that's a lot of attack damage. You do have the AP coming in as well as the match penetration coming in from Rumble, but again, for him to be able to survive through a fight, you do need to build him a little more tank, so you're not going to get as much AP as you do with sort of a mage mid laner. Now, looking again here at Jin Air, they do go ahead, lock in the Kassadin. Now let's look at it lane by lane. We do have the Rumble going up against what is going to be the top lane Kassadin. Again, the Kassadin going to maybe be a flex pick, so that Lulu can go ahead, be put in top or mid. Same thing goes with the Kassadin, because Trace does play Kassadin or Lulu, but it is going to be a top lane Kassadin. So Kassadin against the Rumble, going to be able to poke out and sort of deal with the Rumble earlier on. Rumble is going to eventually hit his mid game power spike and not be able to really bully Kassadin, but going to be able to put up his fight, put up his own. Now, the only problem that I really see there is that whichever side really does get ahead, if the Kassadin does get ahead, that Rumble is going to have a little bit of an issue. If Rumble gets ahead, then he's going to be able to ride that mid-game power spike throughout the entire game, or most of it, and sort of render that Kassadin a little bit useless. Now, looking at the jungler matchups, you do have the Jarvan against the Rengar. One a little more tank, one's more damage. It really depends on how much ganking or they're going to be able to do. The Rengar may be able to fight the Jarvan a little bit early, but his base damage is so high and his base armor is so high that might not be the best option for Rengar. So you might want to go ahead, just get to the side lanes, get to a lane as quickly as possible to sort of ahead, get some damage off, get some gank pressures on, and maybe earn a lead that way for his lanes. Now, with the Lulu versus the Jace, it's a lot of poke in that lane. The shields and the utility coming in from Lulu might be able to go ahead and help through the Jace. Jace really doesn't really have a way to sort of protect himself from the poke of Lulu, so it's up to Bliss here to sort of see what he can do against GBM. Now, at the bot lane, I think this is where it gets really interesting. You do have the Lucian Thresh against the Corki Morgana. Normally, I would go ahead and put this towards the Lulu or the Morgana Corki, just because Morgana can go ahead and black shield any kind of CC that Thresh is going to put down, and Lucian doesn't really have a way to sort of help Thresh with the CC. He's more of just there for pure damage. He doesn't really have too much of a slow to go ahead and help with, so they can't really chain the CCs to go ahead and maybe get rid of that first black shield and then do something else with it. But Morgana is going to be able to lock down one of the targets, as well as put out quite a bit of damage, and her ultimate's going to be able, if Lucian and Thresh do want to go ahead and get in, but that Morgana ultimate's going to really go ahead and stop them, and then they have the Corki AoE that's going to be able to put down damage onto both of those targets. Lucian's more of a single target fighter, and he is going to be able to go ahead and trade with the Corki, but I'm not entirely sure if he can survive through both the Morgana and Corki damage, especially because they're both AoE, so Thresh isn't going to really be too much of a help either, especially with that Black Shield happening once again. So, I think the lane pressures overall are in Jin Air's favor, as well as they do have that Rengar that's going to be able to scare Samsung off a little bit of pressure if they don't have vision. Now, looking at the team fight, they do have a lot to protect. There's not too much tank here. Corki, Rengar, and Kassadin are going to be the high damage threats. But even though they don't have a lot of tank, they do have a lot of protection with the Morgana and the Lulu. A lot of lockup, a lot of CC, a lot of ways to go ahead and shield up these people, empower these people to go ahead and put out the damage that they need to put out. So you can have Rengar, Kassadin, and Corki go ahead and dive that back line and almost be entirely safe because of the amount of protection that is going to come from the Lulu and the Morgana. Now, on the Samsung side, again, there's a lot of engage that we were talking about with the amount of times they want to dive back in, and their damage sort of does drop off towards the mid game with the Lucian and they spike in the mid game with the Lucian and the Rumble. The Jace as well is a little bit more of a late game damage source, as well as that Jarvan being an early game damage source and a late game tank. But I think the overall power spikes synchronize a lot better with Jin Air, so I would expect them to go ahead and come out ahead. This game, Jin Air does come out ahead. They do win the game at 44, basically 45 minutes, and it is a pretty sizable lead that they go ahead and obtain. So not too surprising there. Something that Samsung wasn't really able to handle. The amount of damage that was coming out from Jin Air there. So we're going to go ahead and jump into game number 2. Now, swapping sides here, we do have the Corki ban coming up from Samsung or from Jin Air. Something that they don't want getting into Fury's hands. Fury is kind of known as a Corki player, so again, that was a good takeaway from Samsung in the first game, and it's again something they just don't want to get into his hands. Samsung taking away the Gnar, something they don't want Jin Air to go ahead and first pick. The Morgana coming out from Jin Air. The Morgana ban is really interesting. They see it as a huge threat, but I honestly would just leave it up. Wraith and Bliss both play it, but Kuve doesn't in the top lane. So something that might not be. I think the Jin Air does have a huge advantage with the Morgana. Maybe force Samsung out to ban it. But again, something that they prioritize, and maybe they prioritize not playing against it as well. Samsung again banning out the Xerath, something that they really just don't want to see. We saw it the last game. We kind of went over it a little bit in the earlier set. Lissandra being banned out from Jin Air as well. Interesting thing there. I would have waited to maybe first pick that, and the Azir coming out from Samsung. So again, we'll look at the power bands that are the power picks that are up. We have the Janna up. We have the Jarvan up. We have the Lee Sin up. We have the Rumble. A lot of power picks coming up, or that are still up for Jin Air. So I do go ahead and have Jin Air pick up the Janna. Again, the Janna, whenever it's up first pick, we do have Koreans picking that up. Again, I think a lot like Xerath, it's the perfect sort of pick for Korean style of play. Very rotation based, a lot of extra movement speed, a lot of ways to disengage, reset a fight on your terms. Very important positioning champion, but yeah, I think just a very, very strong pick, especially in Korean levels of, or Korean style of play. Now looking over at Samsung, they are going to go ahead first pick the Syndra and the Lee Sin. So the Syndra, of course, could go mid lane, or most likely going mid lane as of right now. And then we go ahead and see the Lee Sin pick. So the Lee Sin, very standard kind of pick there. They went with the Jarvan the last game. Didn't really do too much. I think the Jarvan went. Let me look it up here. Jarvan went 1, 4, and 8. So he did okay. Not horrible, not great though. But you just need something with a little more game impact early on. So we do have the Lee Sin being picked up. A lot of early game pressure. Good mid game pressure as well. Not the late game powerhouse that Jarvan is in terms of being able to tank, but again, just giving a lot more utility, being able to kick someone back or away into the team fight. It's not the pure engaged champion that Jarvan is. Now, for Jin Air, they are going to go ahead and take the Tristana as well, or the Tristana as well as the Jarvan. So, the Tristana is something that wants to go ahead and jump into the fights, wants to go ahead fights and get those resets as quickly as possible. You do have the Jarvan to go ahead and help her with that CC to keep people off of her, as well as the Janna to shield her up and again help peel. So yeah, once the Jarvan Cataclysm goes down, gets people into that fishbowl, you can go ahead and have Tristana jump in, shooting fish in a barrel, and sort of get those resets as quickly as possible. Now moving on to Samsung, you do have them getting the Kassadin and the Sivir, so stealing away that Kassadin that was so strong for Trace in the last game, as well as getting that Sivir. Now, we talked a lot about Sivir in the previous match that I went over with the GE Tigers versus IM. I think this is a good example of when the Sivir is a very good pick with the comp. You have Kassadin, who has a lot of good ways to get into a fight or get into the back line, and Lee Sin, who can kind of do that if he has the ward jumps to go ahead and make a play. But with the Sivir ultimate, you do have ability to go ahead and help Syndra get her stun off, help Lee Sin get in a little bit quicker, and help Kassadin run up a little bit faster for that Rift Walk for a little bit further damage to get further back into that back line, where maybe he might not have the range to go ahead and do that earlier on. So yeah, I think that's a very good comp. It's a very dive-heavy comp. It's a comp that wants to go and fight and engage, and I think that's a very strong pick. And they do have the damage with the Syndra and the Kassadin to go ahead and fight without a high damage AD carry, so something more like a Sivir. For Jin Air, we do have Gank by Mom picking up that Orianna, as well as Trace picking up the Renekton. So the Orianna and the Renekton, just two very safe picks. Two picks that are very much sort of standards or staples of their lanes. The Orianna, very, very safe mid laner. The Renekton, just a powerhouse in the top lane, can go ahead and duel with most champions in the top. As of right now, it looks like he's going to be dueling with the Kassadin. So very strong pick there from Trace and from Jin Air. Now looking at their teamfight comp, you do have the AoE sort of wombo coming in. You have the Orianna, the ball delivery system that can go in with either Jarvan or Renekton there. They have the dive buddies going in. You have Renekton going in, stunning people, giving that AoE AoE damage or burn from his ultimate, and most likely a Sunfire Cape that he's going to go ahead and pick up, or maybe not, I don't know. And then you have the Jarvan on top of the Cataclysm. You have the knockback and sort of heal that comes in with Janna in case you don't want to fight that particular engage, and then you have the damage monster coming out from Tristana. And again, just a lot of ways to peel for Morgana, so it's a lot of protect the Tristana comp, but again, she only gets like that in the late game. She's not particularly strong because of her short range in the early to mid game, so you do want to help her get to that late game comp. While on Samsung's side, you do have a little bit of more of a mid game focus. So you do have Samsung going ahead taking the Fizz here for Bliss. So it's a shake up at the end there. We talked about how the entire comp was pretty much on Jin Air's side was pretty much due to that first pick, Syndra, maybe figuring out where she's going to go, assuming she's in the mid lane. Now, what ends up happening is that we end up getting Syndra in the mid lane, or in the support role. So those stuns are coming out from the support role, and you have a lot more AP damage than you originally thought. So the Fizz being extremely strong, going to be able to put a lot of pressure onto that Orianna, something that he's gonna want to go ahead and jump in on, more so than the Syndra was, which was more of a long range burst mage. Different matchup entirely, a little bit more dangerous for Orianna. So some good bait and switch there, as well as that bot lane. Now not sure really what to do. The Syndra is not going to want to go in onto the Janna Tristana, but more or less just poke and try to get them as low as possible, and get that that big AoE stun off from a distance, and then get Syndra or the Sivir speeding them up as quickly as possible to go ahead and follow up on that stun. So a lot of good pressure there. So we talked about the team fight from Jin Air. Let's talk about the team fight from Samsung. And team fight from Samsung coming out extremely strong. A huge mid game focus. Now we do have the Fizz coming in that wants to go ahead and get in. Again, going to benefit from that Sivir comp. Not too much to really discuss other than they want to go in, they want to run as quickly as possible, engage and fight and get into that back line, destroy the Tristana as quickly as possible, then move on to the Orianna, and then sort of just clean up from there. And so just a very strong, very aggressive comp coming in from Samsung. And that's really how the game turns out. The game ends up being about 44 minutes long. Samsung does go ahead and take it out. A lot of fighting, a lot of back and forths. Some really great plays coming in from Fury on Sivir, great uses of the ultimate, and able to go ahead and clean up the fights with that sort of chaotic nature that those fights do create, and not able to get the Tristana really to that full late game period. By the time they hit that point, by the time they got to the full late game period, the game was pretty much at an ends. So let's go ahead now, move on to the final game of the series. Now we do have game 3, and so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Looking at it one more time, we have Samsung on the blue side, Jin Air on the red. Again, Samsung with the first ban, Xerath, something they wanted to get rid of. Jin Air banning out the Janna. The Janna did help them out, played very well on it, but it's something that they don't want to go ahead and deal with. The Azir ban coming out once again from Samsung. GBM sort of seen in solo queue playing that Azir, known to be very strong on it. So not only a power pick, but something that they really that Jin Air would not have a problem going ahead and first picking. And we have the Gnar ban coming out from Jin Air as well, Lissandra ban, and the Sivir. So they saw how strong the Sivir was. They really only change here is that the Sivir ban comes out. And yeah, they just saw how strong that was, how strong Fury was on that pick, and they want to go ahead and ban it out as quickly as possible. Now, Samsung going ahead and they're going to go ahead and first pick the Kassadin. So the Kassadin was extremely strong for them last game. They had Cuvée on it, playing extremely well. So Jin Air are going to go back to their strategy of first picking that Morgana, really throwing off. They are going to go back to what they did in the first game pretty much with that Janna Corki. Or that, sorry, not Janna, Morgana Corki lane. So yeah, just a lot of kill pressure once again, a very strong lane, a very solid lane. You have Bliss going ahead. They're going to go ahead and pick up the Lee Sin and the Lulu here. So they're doing a lot of what they did the last game. What it looks like here, this again, Lulu can go in the top lane, it can go in the mid lane, it can go play support. So a lot of utility here. It's the same sort of thing. It's the same mind game that Jin Air is trying to play here with the Morgana. So it's a lot of rotations there to see who goes where. So Jin Air gonna go ahead, take the Thresh and the Jarvan. So again, they do go ahead, show that it's going to be a Thresh Corki lane now instead of that Morgana Corki. So Morgana's either going to go in the top lane or the mid lane, but they don't make a choice yet. They're not entirely they're not showing their hand yet. So Samsung now has the Lulu and the Kassadin. So Kassadin either going in the mid or top lane, and depending on where he goes, they can go ahead and make a choice of where to put the Morgana. Now, Fury going to go ahead and lock in this Lucian that he played in the first game, as well as they're going to go ahead and lock in the Fizz. So, the Fizz pick going to be something that Bliss played very well on the last game. Not extremely strong on it, not overly strong, but did play a very good game against GBM's Orianna. Now, this does sort of show their hand. It shows the full comp here, so now Jin Air can go ahead and put that Morgana wherever they like. So it's going to most likely be the Lulu at support, the Fizz in the mid lane, or the Kassadin and the Kassadin at top. Now, this goes back to the last game as well. This game, they can go ahead and throw a complete curveball out, put that Fizz in support, or put the even Kassadin at support, and move with the Lulu around, and that's sort of what you do with the Syndra support pick. Even in the last game, even though it wasn't the last game, it has no. So there's no Syndra in this game. You're not entirely sure when you see something that weird come out what else they really do have planned out coming around. So really interesting sort of pickup there. So we'll just wait to see where that goes. Now Jin Air does have to make a choice where they want to put this Morgana, whether they want to put it in the top or mid lane. It looks like they do like that Fizz matchup, so they're going to go with the Orianna here on GBM. Now, yeah, they're going to go ahead and lock that pick in. And there it goes. So we're going to have them shuffle around a little bit. This is going to be the final lineup. So let's go over sort of the lane matchups here. We have the Morgana and the Kassadin. Morgana is going to do perfectly fine laning against the Kassadin. She does have the Dark Binding as well as the Black Shield to go ahead and deal with anything that Kassadin's going to be able to put out. And she is going to be able to farm quite a bit better than Kassadin. So not a lot of kill pressure, but she is going to be she's going to be pretty safe in that top lane. Especially with Trace playing her, he does play a lot of top Morgana, so very safe sort of pick up there. Lee Sin versus Jarvan in the jungle. Both of them just do want to farm up and do have a lot of early gank pressure. Lee Sin maybe a little bit more of a duelist, but again, Jarvan does have such high damage, base damage, and a lot of armor that really Lee Sin that's not a risk they want to go ahead and take. So I'm assuming both of them want to go ahead and maybe deal with that a little bit earlier. Bliss and GBM, both the same matchup that we had last game. GBM did play very, very well in the laning phase. Bliss held his own, but you could tell that he was struggling just a little bit. Had a lot of help from Eve on that Lee Sin, so it could be something that we see again. But once Eve came and helped Bliss out a little bit, Bliss did have a little bit of an easier time, but it looks like GBN wants to go back to that matchup. Maybe thinks he has a little bit of an advantage there. And then in the bot lane we have the Lucian Lulu lane against the Corki Thresh. Corki Thresh is the lane I really do like. It's a lot of AoE damage, a lot of utility and protection for Corki to go ahead and put that damage out as quickly as possible. Lucian again going to be able to trade with that Trinity Force Corki in the mid game. One of the few champions that can. And then Lulu for the extra poke damage and going to be able to help protect Lucian. So I think that's a little bit of a push lane, depending on which one gets the early advantage there and is able to scale up a little bit faster. It just really depends. Now looking at the team fights, I think that Jin Air has the stronger team fight here. They do have the Jarvan coming in as that tank, as well as the Thresh is going to get pretty tanky, as well as provide a little bit more utility in that lane. And they do have the Corki coming in that's going to be able to Valkyrie in or out depending on what's going on, as well as the great AoE damage. And you do have the ball delivery system that can be put onto the Jarvan or Thresh with the Orianna, and that Morgana for a lot of extra damage with her in the top lane, going to be able to build some damage and be a big nuisance, especially with the amount of lockdown that's going to come in from Thresh and Jarvan. On Samsung's side, again, it's a team. It's pretty much the same comp they ran the last time, with a lot of damage, a lot of want to go in, want to fight, but they don't have that extra speed up from Sivir. So that's why the Sivir ban was so important. It's pretty much the same comp they won with last game, but instead they have the Lucian, a lot more damage coming out, but something that they're not going to be able to get nearly as much utility with getting the Kassadin and the Lee Sin and the Fizz into that back line. They do have the Lulu to help protect people a little bit more, maybe help them survive a little bit and get them a little more speed up to get into that back line, but it's not like that big team speed up coming in from Sivir. So really going to be an interesting thing there. Jin Air does end up taking this game pretty convincingly. GBM does just kind of style on the Bliss. 40-minute game, so Jin Air does go ahead and take the series 2-1. So you do see a little bit of you do see the importance of those flex picks coming in from Jin Air, the confusion that they create on both sides and where they can sort of go, and on Samsung's side as well. It's a sort of bait and switch that Syndra, so you do see sort of that coming in from both teams.